So thank you again for joining our budget town hall. I think what I will do I will go ahead and introduce Supervisor Holly Mitchell. Supervisor.
Thank you very much, Kofi, and good evening, everyone. I want to thank Rory for our ASL interpretation. Thank you very much. And I'm really excited that we are offering this in multiple languages, recognizing and valuing the diversity of our home county of Los Angeles. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to try to remember to speak slowly to allow our interpreters to keep up, because sometimes I can talk kind of fast, particularly when I'm excited. And budgets excite me. I am indeed a policy wonk. So good evening. I'm honored to serve as your LA County Supervisor representing the fantastic Second District, and to talk about a topic that really is important to me personally, and one that I hope is important to you too. And that really is to talk about our budget process and priorities for our home district, the Second District. Earlier this week, LA County's Chief Executive Officer presented the recommended budget for the next fiscal year. You know, I've really my whole professional career have talked about government budgets at every level of government as being value statements, because I'm sure, like all of you, I pay for what's important to me in my personal life, and I fight to pay for what's important for my communities in my professional life as a policymaker. And so, as you know, the budget powers the county's work, funding critical services and programs for our 10 million family, friends, and neighbors, the kinds of services that we all rely on. I'm proud of the work we're doing, for example, with our anti-racism, diversity, and inclusion initiative, which has helped to distribute our federal rescue plan dollars into the communities where they're most needed. I think that we should apply the same kind of lens, if you will, and our commitment to equity for our overall county budgeting process. So in the coming year, the county will be launching 4 new departments, one dealing with aging, youth, economic opportunity, and justice and care. That's important to think about in the terms of the budget, brand new working departments that will be standing up and launching. We'll be completing the first year of the county's guaranteed income program, Breathe LA County, that I'm very proud of. I was proud to pass that motion with my colleague, Supervisor Sheila Kuehl. We have an opportunity to further expand the county's commitment to care first, jails last, and build up a reserve fund at the county to prepare us to plan for and create critical community assets, including safe and secure healing centers and our youth and community care centers. So these are just a very few examples of what's at stake and what would be included in our budget for the next fiscal year. You're going to have the opportunity tonight to hear from a few of my senior deputies on additional opportunities within their policy area for creating a more equitable LA County. It's important to note that we are just at the beginning of the budget process. I know some people were confused when they saw the board actually take a vote on Tuesday, but that was not the final budget. This is the beginning of our budget process, so it hasn't been finalized yet. It takes several phases and public hearings to get to a final budget, which you'll hear more about shortly. And I hope that with tonight's orientation and introduction to the budget process, that you'll commit to yourself, quite frankly, and to me, to continue to be engaged and participate in those future opportunities. Again, our goal is to keep you informed on the budget process and to gain input from you that will help inform the priority budget recommendations that we will make from the Second District and that we'll be providing to the Chief Executive Office. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the community advocates and residents that have been working with my office prior to tonight Thank you for being at the table for tough conversations on how the county budget can uphold our commitment to alleviating poverty, investing in care first and jails last, and ultimately creating the kind of thriving communities that we all deserve to grow old and with dignity and raise our families in. These past 2 years of fighting, literally, a health and economic pandemic, along with the rising cost of living, has shown us that we simply don't have an option to return to the status quo. This year, I've had the honor of serving as chairwoman of the LA County Board of Supervisors, and I've made my priority for all of us an equitable recovery from this pandemic. Your support with helping to inform the budget process is a key component to how we build back equitably. So I want to thank you for being a part of the discussion. I'm really excited to introduce you to not only Kofi as our senior deputy on budget, but to my entire team of senior deputies, so you can hear from them directly and see the kind of work they do each and every day on your behalf. Thank you so much for spending some time with us to do your due diligence as a resident of this county in learning the budget process so you are empowered to help inform it. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Supervisor Mitchell. And it's been a pleasure to serve you and be part of this amazing team. So I think for the good of the audience, I'm just going to go over what we'll be covering today, maybe in 30 seconds. So next, we will be showing you an overview of the county budget process. Why? So if we are today going to talk to you about our priorities, and we want you guys to be aware of what the budget process in the county is. So after showing you that video, we will have each of our deputies come to you and provide you an overview of the priorities for their issue areas. We're going to have health, justice, homeless and housing, arts and culture, child welfare and human services, environmental justice, economic development, and infrastructure and transportation. Each of you will also have an opportunity to provide us feedback. And so after each deputy presentation, you will have an opportunity to do an instant poll survey on Zoom. And also we have a Menti instant poll survey for those of you who would not be able to do the Zoom poll. Thank you again. And I'm hoping that you guys have a wonderful, wonderful time.
Los Angeles County is the nation's largest municipal government, with more residents than most states, and a multi-billion-dollar budget that's bigger than that of Kansas, Montana, and Vermont combined. We work all year long to build a budget that meets the needs of our 10 million residents. Here's a look inside the process. We start in January, when county departments submit their budget proposals to the CEO. The CEO evaluates those proposals and makes recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. State law requires the county to always balance its budget. And just as with the household budget, that means making hard choices based on how much funding is available. County funding comes primarily from 3 sources: federal, state, and locally generated revenues like property and sales taxes. Most of this money is restricted to support specific programs that the county is legally required to provide, like public health care, assistance to children and families, keeping our communities safe, and running fair and accessible elections. The budget also funds culture, education, and recreation, including world-class museums and beaches, an expansive park system, and an extensive network of community libraries. It also supports programs to address some of our toughest social problems and sets aside rainy day funds to keep services running when times get tough. It's all guided by the policy vision of the Board of Supervisors, including strong commitments to anti-racism, equity, and social justice. These values, established through a set of board-directed priorities, shape the recommended budget, which the CEO submits to the board for consideration in mid-April. In May, the board holds public hearings so that residents and other stakeholders can voice their opinions on the budget. Next comes the adopted budget, which is traditionally approved by the board before June 30th. And finally, the supplemental budget in October to incorporate state, federal, and other allocations. Once approved, the county's final adopted budget becomes its spending plan. That's a quick snapshot. For more information, visit ceo.lacounty.gov and click on the Budget tab.
Thank you so much. So now we're going to go on to the next part of our agenda, which is to start talking about the budget priorities. And the first issue area that we'll be discussing today is health. And our Senior Deputy for Health and Wellness, Yolanda Vera, will be taking it on.
Perfect. Well, good evening, and nice to be here with you. I'm going to talk about I will talk about three priorities on health and wellness. The first one is on COVID response, recovery, and equity. We know that COVID has done a number on our residents, both individually and collectively, and the highest rates of death and infection occurred in our communities of color. Our frontline workers who drive buses, who serve us food, who are face-to-face with hundreds of people each day, were hit the hardest. And we're feeling the harmful effects not only from the disease, but the ripple effects. Chronic and infectious diseases worsened. People delayed care because they were afraid to go to their doctor. Infectious diseases worsened. For example, we're seeing the highest rates of gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis than we've ever seen before. And that's because, in part, the resources in the healthcare system all shifted to deal with COVID and away from some of the other diseases we have previously been monitoring. And then another ripple effect is healthcare professionals. Many doctors and nurses, they burned out from the stress, they retired early. And so in our county, we're seeing a shortage of healthcare providers. So in this context, recovery means regaining our full ability to function and thrive and be all we want to be individually and as a community. And it means our budget will support getting healthcare services and healthcare providers to make our communities whole again, especially in those areas hit the hardest. So I'll move to the second one, which is mental health access. And that one, what that means is our county is facing big mental health challenges and big opportunities around mental health. COVID resulted in increased levels of anxiety, isolation, and depression, especially among our youth. And the demand for services, frankly, outstrips the available supply of clinicians and resources. And we have way too many unhoused persons who are seriously mentally ill on our streets. But there's hope. We have real proven models of what works to restore wellness. There is an increased openness to talk about mental health with our families across cultures without shame or judgment. This certainly didn't happen when I was growing up. So this is a new growing development. And there is an outpouring of support from our youth in particular to have more mental health services, especially in our schools. So mental health funding is tricky, but we need to make sure that we're spending what resources we do have wisely to make sure that there are more access, more services in communities, especially for our youth. And we need to do this in a way that's transparent and less mysterious with our engaged community constituents. The last one, which is health and mental health and other services needed to keep residents out of jail. And we'll have another deputy talk a little bit about this as well too. There are currently almost 13,000 people in our Los Angeles County jail system. And there was a study done by the RAND Corporation, which found that 60%, 6 out of every 10 had serious mental health problems, and they could instead live in the community safely if they were given those services. And that's shocking, 6 out of 10. We know what works. The county has a great diversion program that has received about 7,400 people from the courts, all of them seriously mentally ill, and they've given them supportive services as well as targeted medical treatment to help them with their mental health issues. The results have been remarkable. We have stabilized their housing. They've stayed housed. They haven't repeated their offenses. The challenge is this diversion program is in sore need of money because it's capped right now. The courts want to send more seriously mentally ill individuals to us, and we have to say no. So a huge priority for the supervisor is to marshal resources so we can provide care to restore dignity to these individuals who should not be incarcerated. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. Now we're going to move on to our the second part of our agenda, which is the discussion of on the priorities from our justice team. And our senior deputy for justice, John Mathews, will be taking it on. Thank you, John.
Thanks so much, Kofi. So that picture is funny. I have a lot more facial hair. It's great to see you all virtually. Thank you so much for participating and allow us to share community space with you. I think it's perfect that I'm going after Yolanda because the way we think about justice in so many ways is focused on making sure Angelenos get the care that they need. And so, Yolanda, even separately, when she was going through her priorities, her last one was identical to my first one. So I think it's a perfect segue. She already talked to you about the crisis in our jails and the expansion of Office of Diversion and Reentry. I just want to focus on that because, as Yolanda stated, I'm looking at Vera's jail tracker now. There are 12,778 people there. 5,582 have some form of mental illness, and it's inhumane for those folks to be in the jail not getting the care they need. We know that the Office of Diversion and Reentry works. When you talk to the judges, when you talk to lawyers on both sides, the prosecutors, defense attorneys, the clinicians, they all say that this works, and yet the program hasn't been able to admit new clients or patients. So we think it's essential we significantly expand these services. Not only is it essential when we think about the humanity and making sure people in the county's care get the health and support they need, it's also essential to closing Men's Central Jail, which the LA County Board of Supervisors has already committed to. If you've been there, you've seen the trauma that's happened there. And so that's another really important reason why it's important that we expand funding to ODR. The next item on my priority list is investing in youth justice reimagined. The supervisor, when she came in, when our team got together, we were all encouraged to think about the first grader in LA County and what that first grader's life would look like in 11 years if you all were to continue to support the work that the supervisor is doing. And so youth, and you heard Yolanda talk about it, you'll hear others talk about it. It's so important to our vision for LA County and investing in our future. So we're in the process of standing up a Department of Youth Development. It's essential that we fund that department and make sure that our youth are getting trauma-informed, care-informed services and education. I see so many of you that are on the Zoom that are already providing support and education to some of the youth that are in probation camps and halls. We know that so many of you are committed to this work, and we will continue to fight for this issue and make sure we're developing new transformational systems in LA County. The last priority on this list is investing in more community-based violence prevention. So we have an Office of Violence Prevention, but we also know that so many of you are already in the community doing peace building work, doing violence prevention work. We want to make sure you're getting the resources that you need to continue to serve our residents. So many of you stepped up when COVID hit and were, in your neighborhoods, informing people about all of the health risks, making sure people knew where they could get vaccinated. We're going to be calling on you more, and we're going to do our best to get you the funding that you need. We also know that there's larger organizations that have been doing the work. And so we're really trying to think creatively about how we can work through third-party administrators and get money out directly into community to help our folks, because we know that violence has increased, but we also know that strictly relying on suppression and incarceration is not going to solve the root causes. So appreciate your time and look forward to working with community on these issues. And I realized I couldn't vote on the last poll, I guess, but I trust that you all will inform us on what you want to see. Thanks.
Thank you so much, John. Now we're going to move on to our third policy area, which is housing and homelessness. And today we're going to have Lilly Sofiani, our Assistant Deputy for Housing and Homelessness, talk about the top 3 priorities in this area. Thank you, Lilly, for taking this on.
Thanks, Kofi, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Lilly Sofiani here, Assistant Deputy of Homelessness. On our team, we also have Isela Gracian, who is our Senior Deputy of Housing and Homelessness. So I'll quickly go over also three main priority areas under housing and homelessness. So in homelessness, our focus is really to look at the broader lens of the different systems that actually create homelessness, right? And not just looking at the homelessness crisis within the system of homelessness, but really the broader spectrum of the different systems that feed into the homelessness machine. Systems like the ones we just saw Yolanda and John go over, mental health, justice system. These are all really great systems that sort of push people into homelessness system, right? So in order for us to achieve our big goal, which is to attain functional zero, meaning that we can never get to a true zero in homelessness, because we can't really prevent someone from falling into homelessness if someone is, experiencing turmoil or trauma at any moment on any given night. But with functional zero, if we can create a system that has the capacity to meet the inflow as it happens in real time, so meaning the amount of people that fall into homelessness, we can capture them and rehouse them immediately so that they are experiencing homelessness one time and briefly, rather than ending up on the street and becoming chronically homeless. And then we have created a system of functional zero where no one is actually living on the street. So today, for example, we have in Los Angeles County, we house 207 people per day, but 227 people fall into homelessness every single day. So our housing system doesn't have the capacity to meet the inflow. The inflow is just so much more overwhelming than the outflow and our ability to rehouse folks in real time. So within this context, while we work on our broader goals of housing creation, preservation, and prevention of homelessness, we're also focusing on the very immediate and the here and now, like the homeless encampments, which are drastically rising in our streets on every corner. So on January 11th, for example, we passed our motion on the RV encampment protocols. And so we are looking to develop programs where we can house the folks living in these encampments and RVs. And then clearing our streets and cleaning up for public safety and dismantling of the RVs. Our encampments and RV encampments have risen drastically over the last 24 months during the pandemic. I'm sure you all have seen. So that is one of our top priority areas that we're focusing on from a lens of equity, meaning taking the resources to the areas that are hardest hit by encampments and insecurity. So second is our housing policy area. So under our housing policy area, we are focusing on our housing subsidy pool, sustaining and increasing entry to the local housing program. So we're looking for more inclusion and looking for a way to increase the amount of constituents and residents that we can include in these programs, especially those who are suffering from housing insecurity and really are one paycheck or one eviction threat away from becoming unhoused themselves. And finally, our planning portfolio. So we are focusing on increasing the capacity for a long-range planning and processing for specific community development projects. So we're really focused on zoning and land use and supporting our county departments for future planning and the review process.
Now we're going to go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the arts and culture priorities. And for this, we'll have Chris Hassan, our Senior Deputy for Arts and Culture, address the audience. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, thank you, Kofi. And good evening, everyone. Thank you again for making the time to be a part of this conversation. Our first priority is to double the organizational grants program, which is a grant provided by the LA County Department of Arts and Culture and provides flexible grant funding to small and mid-sized arts organizations that are serving underserved and marginalized communities. The OGP is an important funding source for organizations that provide critical services and programs in communities that are historically locked out of traditional arts grants. The board recently approved the supervisor's motion asking for recommendations on how to do this, which will be provided this fall. Our second priority is transforming La Brea tar pits. This project is a redesign of the 13-acre area around the Tar Pits Museum intended to support and demystify scientific discovery and help us better understand climate change in other areas of research. The Natural History Museum is seeking private donations as well as county, state, and federal funding to support this project. Lastly, our office is looking to bring an expansion space of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art to the Second District. This project is part of a broader effort to advance cultural equity by increasing the accessibility of its collection and bringing it to the communities of the Second District beyond the main museum space on Wilshire. In addition, our hope is that an expansion space in the Second District, further into the Second District, I should say, can help create a cultural hub and a vibrant place for the community to come together and enjoy.
All right. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to the next item, which is child welfare and human services policy priorities. And for this, we'll have Kelvin Driscoll, our Senior Deputy for Human Services and Child Welfare. Thank you, Kelvin, for addressing the audience.
Thanks, Kofi. As Kofi mentioned, my name is Kelvin Driscoll, Senior Deputy to Chairwoman Mitchell, handling Human Services and Child Welfare Policy. And if I could have the next slide, I am happy to talk to you about the three budget priorities in our area. The first one being the structural deficit for our Department of Children and Family Services, which the chairwoman and the entire board have done some tireless advocacy work at the state level. In short, the ask here is to have our state partners make sure that they are providing our county with the resources that we need to provide adequate services to children to make sure that they thrive, particularly with our non-minor dependents and those who are a bit older in our system, to make sure that we really make sure that they have the resources that they need to be successful. You heard Lilly talk a little earlier about how these drivers can be, or these systems can drive into homelessness. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. The second area of priority in our policy portfolio is to make sure that we stand up the chairwoman's motion around establishing the Office of Prevention Services. So currently the executive director of the ARDI initiative, Anti-Racist Diversity and Inclusion Initiative, is chairing the task force that will report back to the chairwoman and her board around how to stand up services that are targeted further upstream to ultimately make sure that residents of the second district and the county at large don't come into contact with these systems unless we're talking about child protection. And then lastly is a part of the revitalization of the Vermont Manchester community, the supervisor and her predecessors' support of the Seed School, which we're very proud to mention is the first public college prep boarding school in the state. So we're very proud of that under the chairwoman's leadership, that we will help 400 students prepare for careers in STEM and transportation. And so powering the Seed School, powering the development of the Vermont Manchester community will also be an area that we look to power in our policy portfolio.
Now we're going to move on to our next presentation, which is the top 3 environmental justice priorities from our office. And for that, we'll have Laura Muraida, who's our Senior Deputy for Environmental Justice. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Kofi, and good evening, everyone. Laura Muraida, Senior Deputy for Environmental Justice with Supervisor Mitchell. And we're excited because this year we are hoping to see some significant investment in our priorities, which include a transition towards a clean energy future, as well as expanding access to park space and high quality recreational programming. This also includes a new park that will be opening this year in the West Carson area. And we also have new parks in the works in the coming years as well. So these are important priorities that are critical to our community's health, wellness, and quality of life overall. So our first priority, just transition away from oil and gas. This is really to implement the board adopted motion that to begin the process of phasing out urban oil drilling. This is an issue that disproportionately impacts the health and safety of Black and Latinx communities in SD2 and across the county. And in fact, our district has the largest urban oil field in the nation, the Inglewood oil field. So we've heard from many of our constituents, from activists and advocates as well, about this being a really significant environmental justice priority. To implement this work, we need to undertake an important study that will help the county determine an oil drilling phase out plan. And this phase out plan will also rely on recommendations from our county's Just Transition Task Force. This is a precedent setting model that we've really created at the county for bringing together diverse stakeholders, including labor, indigenous groups, frontline communities, in guiding our critical transition in a way that protects workers and communities impacted by oil drilling. Our next priority is removing barriers to aquatics programming. And so, as we all know, over the past 2 years, we've really realized the critical importance of having access to green space like parks, as well as outdoor recreation opportunities like swimming. But in many low-income communities of color in particular, we have less access to high-quality parks and aquatic spaces. And people rely heavily on public parks programming and resources to access these types of opportunities. It's our priority to make sure that parks and aquatics programming remain affordable and accessible. And this particularly includes providing scholarships to seniors and people with disabilities. This is something that's already provided in the city of LA and other jurisdictions in the county. Lastly, parks after dark and violence reduction in parks. You've already heard from our justice team about the importance of violence prevention in our communities. And so our parks are really these frontline community spaces where peace building and youth investment are desperately needed. Our Parks Department does have proven programs and models like the Parks After Darks program that engages and supports young people in our communities and keeps them out of trouble. But there's also a need to think creatively about new partnerships and also leverage the Office of Violence Prevention so we can ensure that our parks remain safe and healthy spaces for all.
Now we're going to move on to the workforce development and economic opportunity priorities from our office. And for that, we'll have Torosis, our Senior Deputy for Workforce Development and Economic Opportunity. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Kofi. Hopefully everyone can see me. Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. And thank you so much for taking really valuable time out of your busy lives to be here and give us this feedback. Obviously, we know on the economic development front, economic opportunity front, we have been particularly hard hit by the economic crisis around COVID-19. And so Supervisor Mitchell's priorities this year around economic opportunity really center on lifting folks up and out of poverty, back to work, and back to economic opportunity and entrepreneurship. And so in addition to a lot of the American Rescue Plan Act funding that our county has invested in economic opportunity, we're also supporting the growth of systems within our county government to ensure that we sustain this economic recovery. And so the first priority is supporting the Preparing Los Angeles for County Employment program. The PLACE program is a high road training partnership, which means it's centered in worker voice, worker dignity, and it's based on the needs of the industry and the employers. And so this program actually gets folks with high barriers to employment into the county workforce. And so why is this important? Because once you're in county workforce, these are quality jobs where there's an opportunity for advancement, a pension, benefits, and a pathway to family sustaining wages. And so over the course of the last 2 years, we've gotten over 200 individuals with high barriers to employment into county full-time positions, but we need to do more. And so the supervisor recently passed a motion to promote pathways into healthcare careers in county employment. And how do we diversify that pipeline and grow that pipeline of our local community members from our community colleges, adult schools, underrepresented areas of the county and the second district, and make sure that there are opportunities for them to reach county employment. And so we hope to expand that program in the coming year and provide more opportunity for those who have been severely economically challenged and challenged by other barriers, oftentimes through no fault of their own. Moving on to equity in county contracting. This is also something that a lot of you have engaged with our office on, and it's a high priority for Supervisor Mitchell as we think about how we opportunities for our small businesses, our small employers, our nonprofits, our community-based organizations. How do we make sure that the backbone of our regional economy is benefiting from the over $6 billion of goods and services that our county contracts out each year? So whether you're in the nonprofit space, whether you're looking to access opportunities with Care First community investment, with our American Rescue Plan Act funding, or just with any of the procurement needs of our county departments, we're investing to ensure that there are resources for our small employers, to make sure that there's a better technical assistance ecosystem for our small employers so that they know and are prepared for what the requirements are when they bid on a county contract, and that they know where to access these county contracts. So upgrading some of the systems. I know many of you have complained it's hard to find information and it's hard to continue to enter the same information over and over. So how do we upgrade some of the technological systems so that folks can access contracting? But then also, how do we provide a low interest revolving loan fund for some of our smaller employers who don't have the working capital and don't have the cash on hand to float payroll if it takes 15, 30, 60 days to get paid by the county. So both increasing our payment speeds, but also providing working capital to our smaller employers so that they can be competitive for these contracts. And then finally, as we talk about the Poverty Alleviation Initiative, this is led by Supervisor Mitchell in a motion she co-authored with Supervisor Kuhl to establish this as a board-directed priority, establish an actual initiative, and then as the very first component of this initiative, it was to launch our Breathe Los Angeles County Guaranteed Income Program. And so that just wrapped up last week. We have many applications to go through, but this offers $1,000 to folks, 1,000 folks in the county for 3 years, because we know that just because you're poor doesn't necessarily mean you make bad decisions. You are, many folks are in poverty through systemic barriers, historical barriers, and we really need to just lift folks up to the starting line in many areas of our county. So how do we look at opportunities to expand unrestricted cash? How do we look at opportunities to expand, what we're calling our worker equity fund, flexible cash assistance for folks if their car breaks down and they need to get to work, if their driver's license is expired and they need to pay for a new one, if they have childcare issues and they just need quick assistance to overcome that hurdle. Prevention is key, and making sure that folks are being lifted up through respectful interaction with our government services is key. So those are our 3 framing priorities for the budget this year around economic opportunity. And thanks so much for the opportunity to speak to you.
We'll go on to the next item on our agenda, which is the infrastructure and transportation priorities. And for that, we'll have our Senior Deputy for Infrastructure and Transportation, Lilly O'Brien. Thank you, Lilly.
Great, thanks, Kofi, and thanks all. I think I'm the last policy area, so I'll make this short and sweet for all of you whose dinner I'm standing in the way of. I am Lilly O'Brien. I'm the Infrastructure and Transportation Senior Deputy for Supervisor Mitchell. And so my portfolio is really what we do in the public right-of-way and how we leverage the public right-of-way to keep people safe, healthy, and to create a dignified experience for people who are traveling through our county. And so stepping back, the Board of Supervisors really oversee a $30+ billion budget to ensure the health and wellness of all 10 million Angelenos. But the Supervisor Mitchell, is really seen as the mayor of our unincorporated areas. And so our infrastructure priorities are really based on the services that we deliver to the unincorporated and the infrastructure investments that we make to our unincorporated areas in the Second District. So the first priority is around traffic safety. We have a goal in the county to eliminate traffic deaths on county unincorporated streets. The reason this is essential and also possible is because traffic deaths are one of the leading cause of death for kids 5 to 15, and the 3rd leading cause of premature death in Los Angeles County. And they are all preventable. So with safer street design that focuses on reducing excess speed, we can make a difference. We can save lives. We know that we can do it. In this category, we are happy to see a proposed budget that reflects a $26 million increase in traffic safety and street reconstruction funds. But we have a $66 million need in this area. And really lives are on the line. We witnessed nearly 600 deaths over the last 10 years in just the unincorporated areas. And those deaths largely and disproportionately impacted the Second District and Black Angelenos. So this is the first priority for our policy area. The second priority is around infrastructure equity. And what do we mean by infrastructure equity? Well, in 2021, the supervisor introduced a motion that was passed unanimously by her colleagues to direct our Department of Public Works to essentially create an equity action plan that was focused on delivering our infrastructure resources to the communities most in need of those resources. across the country, infrastructure services are largely delivered by who raises their hand first. So if you've got an illegal dumping issue in your community and you know who to call, you're put in a queue, and that issue is handled based on who else is in the queue. Well, that means that in neighborhoods where people don't know who to call with an illegal dumping issue, we often see a huge disproportionality in services going to those communities. So infrastructure equity is about restructuring the way that we deliver services to meet the greatest needs of our constituents and our residents. And we have a huge funding need here because restructuring takes work, takes resources, takes staff time. The third issue area for the infrastructure team is around deleting the digital divide. We call that in shorthand, delete the divide in the county. But in the pandemic, we really saw a huge disparity in access to internet in communities. In the second district, we see neighborhoods where upwards of 30% of households do not have reliable access to the internet. When we went out and did our own firsthand research in the second district about why people were not subscribed to the internet, we found over and over families were having to make a choice between buying dinner for their kid that night and paying for internet that month. That is a false choice families should not have to make. So delete the divide is leveraging the county's power to increase affordable internet options for families. You should not have to choose to eat or do your homework or access a job opportunity or telehealth appointments. So we have a huge funding need in this area in this budget. We'd like to see more funding go toward programmatic staff and resources to further our work in this area, including providing community wireless to families. And so that sums up our infrastructure priorities for this budget year. Thanks all, appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for taking the time to participate in our budget town hall today. On the screen, you'll see our budget team. It is Maeve, who's been helping with the PowerPoint, Kirk, who's our manager, and I, who are all working on the budget. Now, you guys have learned about the county process. You've heard from our deputies about the top priorities for each of their issue areas. Now, I'm going to give the mic to our Chief of Staff, Ms. Fredericka McGee, who closed us out today. We are getting a lot of feedback and comment, and I'd like to thank you again for taking the time to give us that feedback.
Hello, everyone. Again, thank you for taking the time out of your evening to spend with us. More importantly, to give us your feedback. We've mentioned before tonight, budgets are the biggest display of someone's priorities. And even though we have spoken terms of priorities tonight, that does not mean that those are the only things that Team Mitchell will be fighting for. So I want everyone to rest assured, these have been the ones that our team members, came to mind were like the biggest push, that were time sensitive, that were lying in the sands. We've got to see some of these things happen. So your comments in the chat have been very helpful. Many of them are already on our list. Quite frankly, we just didn't have them there because we only had you here for supposed to be an hour, a little over an hour and a half. But we are still fighting for those additional things as well. There were also some comments from our friends in the labor unions about those negotiations. Want you to know that we have been had meetings with several of the labor unions and had communications with the CEO's office about those pieces of it. So that's not, while the total number is a part of our budget process, the getting down in the weeds of that is really a function of the CEO's office, but we have been in communication with the CEO's office about that. Another thing I wanted to flag for everyone as well is that we're talking about our proposed budget that is based on the funding that has come into the county at this point. Many of you have heard us talk about ARP dollars, which were the huge $1.9 billion investment over a 2-year period that the federal government has made in our county as a result of COVID. That second tranche of money is coming. So we had gotten about half of that, about $900 million before, and we will get that second tranche coming up in the next month or so. And so you will see those portions of those decisions to be made coming up very soon. We would love feedback about what kind of programs, what's been working. There were about 80 programs that were developed as a result of the last ARP funding. And so not all of them are stood up yet, but many of them are. And I don't have that website now, but there is a website that we will get out to everyone. We'll have it in the chat that will let you know which one of those programs are up and running and when you can expect them to be online. So that's about the ARP piece of it as well. Team Mitchell, of course, budget is a huge priority, but as you can see by all of our other policy consultants, we are in the weeds of trying to make sure we make lives better for Angelenos across policy areas. We know that we don't just fight for an arm because you need your leg, and we don't just fight for a mouth because you need your eyes as well. And we get that, and we are committed to doing that as well. So you will see that we are trying to serve you in a ton of different areas. So we appreciate the feedback that you have provided for us and know that we will be doing that. One thing that tends to come up is we talked about equity a great deal here. And part of equity, of course, is the underlying nemesis that kind of prevents that is sometimes it's racism. And so SD2 has been really the home of trying to combat racism in LA County. You know, many of you, of course, know about the 65 Watts riots and then the 92 uprising, which we will be celebrating that are honoring and trying to learn more about what caused us to have the 92 riots coming up in the next week. The anniversary is the 29th, April 30th. We will be having a discussion about that tomorrow. We have a groundbreaking at the Vermont Manchester location, which is where one of the fires took place, where there were fires across the city in 92 when we had the uprising following the Rodney King decision. And so if you're available, we will be streaming it live. You know, you don't have to necessarily come out to Vermont and Manchester, but we would love for you to be engaged. We have John Kim, who is with the Advancement Project, who will bring a great deal of perspective, as well as Brenda Shockley, who is with the mayor's office and has done development as a result of that as well. And so the supervisor will be interviewing them. They're both a wealth of information, and we hope that you will join in. This is only one of many of the series that we will be doing on a monthly basis on the issues of race and trying to unpack some of that so our communities will be blended. The supervisor talked about at the beginning of the hour that we had interpreters here for ASL, as well as for Korean and for Spanish. That's recognizing that we have to stand united, that even though there are some differences and we can have uncomfortable conversations, but at the end of the day, we are stronger for it. So I would encourage you all to call our office if you need to get additional information. Also check our website. Our office phone number is 213-974-2222. Again, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate having you all here, and we look forward to having you at our next town hall. Take care. And again, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Fredericka. Now, since we're talking about the budget, we also want to flag one event for you. On Wednesday, May 11th, starting at 9:30, we're going to have the public hearings for the LA County budget. So please save the date, and we hope that you will continue to participate and be part of this process.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank my team. Thank you, Fredericka, and all of the hard work that went into developing this presentation. One final thing I wanted to say, what I got out of it too, I am so thrilled that constituents were able to communicate with each other. Under the Q&A function, we saw constituents with different points of views opining on the same subject matter. And I hope that many of you, as some of you indicated, will continue your own communication and follow each other on social media and continue to learn and educate from each other. The point of this exercise was to hear from you, whether you agree or disagree. That's how we want to receive information and keep open lines of communication with all of you. So again, thank you. Hope that you'll participate on May 11th, and good night.